Think about this. You walk into your first estate sale of the day, you run to the room that looked the most promising on estatesales.net, you see a bunch of high prices, and now you're thinking, oh no. You run to the garage, same story. But you can't walk away empty-handed because you stood in line for an hour just to get in. So now you try to save the day. You're looking for something, anything, so you grab a few things that catch your eye. You get back to your car. Now you're wondering if you can sell what you bought. And this is how 90% of resellers approach an estate sale, and it's why so few people are actually making real money as resellers. So today I'm going to give you a window into my exact process to win at every sale, including garage sales. I spent so many years wasting time and money on the same bad strategies that were killing my profit.
Yay! Flippin' high Grammy!
The first thing that changed my life as a reseller was learning those red flags on which sales to avoid entirely. Now remember, you've only got about 6 to 8 hours of time that sales are even open, but for every sale you waste your time at, you could be missing that one sale that could make your entire week in profit, maybe even months in profit. My first red flag, if I'm searching the yard sale app or I'm driving up to a yard sale where I have that familiar retail appearance with all those bottles of laundry detergent lined up, all those other brand new items, I'm not stopping. Even if I thought I could turn a profit in this situation, I don't want to risk buying items that were potentially not stored properly or any number of other possible problems. Maybe you've had a different experience with one of these overstock sales. I'd love to hear it, but I gave up on them a long time ago. My second red flag on knowing which sales to avoid altogether, if I look at the yard sale app and a sales photos reveal super high prices, that one is off my list for the day, period. I'm not even going to go and try to get discounts when they're that far off the mark. There's just way too many other opportunities to pay much less. Or if I walk up to a yard sale and the prices are ridiculous, I'm prepared to leave immediately. But a word of caution for you, if you see that the sale is packed, check around if you notice quickly that there's a whole bunch of items you want. If there is, then see if they're open to bulk pricing or see if other people seem to be getting significant discount pricing. I've been shocked a few times at the deals I've ultimately gotten when the seller initially seemed out of touch on pricing. On the flip side, here's a green flag for you on which sales are good. Whenever you encounter a garage sale with excellent prices and even better things, stake your claim quickly, start gathering a pile or getting a box together. Don't spend any time comping at that point because these are the sales where you'll pay $25 for everything and all you have to do at that point is to sell one thing and the rest will be profit for you. If you see a whole collection of something, whether it's vintage jewelry or valuable video games, be prepared to ask how much for all of it immediately. And you can always turn down the offer later on if you discover that the collection isn't what you thought it would be. Some of my biggest profits have happened when I stumbled on a collection in that way. But this is funny to think about today. I was at a yard sale years ago and it was a jackpot in terms of amazing treasures and only dollar prices. I was so excited about all these vintage Japan Christmas items I found that I never even really bothered to look at anything else. Who knows what I missed? The point is, those jackpots are called jackpots for a reason, so make sure you don't rush through those sales. And if you keep reselling, I guarantee that eventually you will hit a jackpot too. Get a bunch of resellers together. That is always the topic, it seems, are the very best finds that we've had. Now, the third red flag on which sales to avoid, but this is about estate sale companies. I have generated a list of estate sale companies whose sales I refuse to go to, they're either not ethical or their prices are so high it's almost impossible to find anything worthwhile to flip. You need to find out which of those kinds of estate sale companies are in your area as well. We've all only got about 50 weekends, if we're lucky, a year to source, and going to those retail price sales is just wasting your precious time and cutting into your profits. They're the companies who never give you a bulk price, even if you're a regular, and the ones who have all the items for sale lined up in fancy displays like a retail store, or they have price tags even describing each item. They're the sales where nobody's buying anything and they have 25% off days. That's a huge red flag for me. If they act like they're doing you a favor with a 25% discount, I can almost guarantee you that their prices are at eBay level, if not well above. And I've added companies to my no-go list because their staff was rude. It's a pet peeve of mine. I figure if they don't care to have friendly staff, they certainly don't care about their clients or their buyers. Here's an example of when I said never again about a certain estate sale company in our area. The photos for one of their sales looked like a dreamy sale, all kinds of treasures that I specifically look for. And the address was almost 30 minutes away, but I knew I could get there at least 30 minutes before they closed. Once I got there, I had only been there for about 15 minutes, and one of them told me to exit the basement, get to checkout, but it was 20 minutes yet before closing. I tried to reason with the guy, but he insisted that I leave. And to make matters worse, they're also one of the only companies in town who close their sales at 1 p.m. It's their company, of course, but in the end, I decided their hours were just too frustrating for me to bother with. And that said, though, before I write off any estate sale company, I will go to at least 2, maybe even 3 of their sales, just like I'm not going to write off a restaurant just because of a bad server, or maybe they are just starting out and they're willing to adjust their policies based on their feedback. And at the same time, you need to make that list of good companies and then get to know them if you can. That's how you'll build your list of favorite companies. That's when your sourcing will definitely improve. Suddenly you're getting contacted that they have something they know you're looking for, or you'll be notified of private sales, things like that. But best of all, you'll genuinely look forward to some of these sales because they've become your friend. Here's some of my green flags for estate sale companies. The staff is friendly, of course, and their prices are no more than 30, maybe 40% of an eBay listing price, and they offer 50% off on the second day. And at the end of that second day or on the third day, they either have a $5, maybe a $10 bag sale, or they're selling box lots for only dollars to move everything out of there. If the house is super packed, my favorite companies, they leave some of the clutter unpriced, unsorted, and they don't overinflate prices if you find something special. Here's more on maximizing your time and budget when sourcing. I do occasionally get to a sale during the week, but I mostly source every Saturday. And let me walk you through my typical planning and mapping process that I do on every Friday. And before you think that sounds way too complicated, it really only takes me about an hour, and you will get that fast. It is worth every minute of it for me because it's made me very efficient for Saturday. But even if you don't want to copy my entire process, I think you can take away at least one thing that will help you do better, efficient sourcing. First off, I briefly scan all the sales and their photos on 5 different websites or apps. I go to estatesales.net, the Yard Sale app, Facebook Marketplace, Nextdoor, and Craigslist. Even if you do no mapping, but just scan all the photos of these websites, you'll be ahead. Do you really want to go to a sale that is almost entirely a giant collection of something that doesn't even sell anymore? And by the way, there are a few companies in our area that they do not photograph. They often don't photograph a lot of the contents of their estate sales. I'm not sure if that's deliberate or not, but sometimes these sales are packed. You want to know who those companies are. So anyway, I scan all the sales and photos on those 5 sites. Marketplace is fantastic, but it's a double-edged sword. The filters are terrible or non-existent, so you'll even find notices about sales that happened 4 weeks ago. But I have had some of my very best scores at sales advertised on Marketplace because so many people don't check there. Then, based on the photos and the other details on all 5 of those websites, I make a list of the sales that look the most promising in terms of quantity and quality, and then I begin with the sale that starts the earliest. From that first sales address, I map out the most efficient route that allows me to get to as many of the other sales as I can. I don't physically draw out a map, though I make a list of all the sale addresses. I can make my route list pretty quickly these days, but there are some really cool door-to-door apps that can do it for you. I've used those in the past for a past job I had, and I think one of them is called Sales Rapid, if I remember correctly. There is one deviation from my weekly list, though. I always stop at any sale that wasn't advertised other than a homemade sign along the side of the road. I've also had some of my best scores at those kinds of sales because you have to drive by them to know about them. And on my sourcing day, which is usually Saturday, as I said, I'm out the door by 6 a.m. I'm the person politely asking the person still setting up for their 7 a.m. sale if I can look around. And only once in a great while have people told me to wait. I could talk for hours about all the treasures I found just because I showed up early. And I realize treasure hunting is the very best part of what we do, but the time you spend sourcing should never be disproportionate to the time you're doing the hard work as a reseller. I currently only work about 10 hours a week on actual listing and shipping, etc., so I can't justify sourcing more than 1 day a week. If I sourced more than that, I'd have a death pile that was literally out of control. The death pile being all of the items we resellers procrastinate on listing. Now let's talk about your inventory budget and why it's the absolute deciding factor on whether or not you turn a profit. As the old saying goes, you want to make your money on the buy whenever possible. But if you've watched my channel for a while now, you know how often I ask for discounts. Those discounts are one of the main reasons my profit margins stay high and my losses stay minimal. Funny enough, though, negotiating is also the number one criticism that I do get on my channel. I see it on other reselling channels. It doesn't happen often, but it happens regularly. People say they're appalled. It makes them sick. I hear it all. Full disclosure here, my channel is about earning money. It's about earning top dollar on what you sell and saving every dollar you can on expenses. I know that every one of you is not doing this for a hobby, but be polite. Don't pressure people if they say no, and buy the lemonade when you can. Now let me share a story with you that perfectly illustrates another reason why I'm always asking for a better price. Last year, I hit a garage sale really early, and the seller had a ton of nice items. All of them were in excellent condition. And then I noticed she had at least 40 pieces of this Ray Dunn ceramic Disneyware. They were cookie jars, mugs, things like that. And I immediately comped one piece. I saw that it was selling for about $70, and I got way too excited. I couldn't wait to make an offer for the whole lot, but unfortunately, in my excitement, I stopped comping after that first item. Here's the hard lesson. If you ever are attempting to make a bulk buy, you have to comp 2 or 3 different pieces, maybe even more, just in case the majority of the lot is practically worthless. That was exactly the case here. Once I got home, I discovered that these were mostly a bunch of $20 listings, and shipping fees would eat any potential profit simply because of their bulk and weight. I had paid her $110 for that collection, and I ended up having to donate almost the whole thing. And I don't often make sourcing mistakes like that, but they do happen. And that's exactly why I relentlessly protect my bottom line on the front end whenever possible. But here's another harsh reality that forces you to pay as little as possible for your inventory: shipping costs. Yesterday, I paid $48.24 for 4 eBay shipping labels. That's about $12 an item, and that's with seller shipping discounts. With shipping fees skyrocketing, securing inventory deals is more crucial to me than ever to protect my margins. Beyond shipping, eBay resellers have to absorb numerous invisible expenses prices and losses. And think about unfair returns. The platform practically dictates that the buyer is always right, and often you can't resell a returned item in the same condition, or you completely lose out on the return shipping costs. Your true eBay income is so much more complicated than what you paid for an item versus what you sold it for. Do not let this scare you, especially you newer resellers, because I get very few returns. In fact, I'll be doing a video on minimizing your returns in the coming months. But finally, keep this in mind when you're outsourcing and you're thinking about asking for discounts, which really pays off. Every homeowner holding a garage sale has the option to sell their things on eBay themselves. And the truth is, most of them will readily admit that they don't want to go through the hassle of listing and shipping it all themselves. They just want their stuff gone. And if you don't buy it, their car will be backing up to the garage at the end of the day to haul all those leftovers straight to Goodwill. Now let's talk about how I make my way through a sale so I walk away with some great flips. But let's start with garage sales first. My number one rule: scan the whole area first. You don't want to be stuck at that first table not realizing that there's a jackpot of deals on the other side of the garage. Clothing is not my reselling focus, but I always make sure to check for those slam dunks like Patagonia pieces or single stitch t-shirts. I am one of the most curious people you will ever meet, and that curiosity has turned into profit for me over and over. There are plenty of items I sell that I couldn't tell you precisely what the object is used for, even after I've made the sale, but something about it caught my attention, whether it was retro graphics or bright colors. Let's call it one of my flipping high Grammyisms: get curious. One of my favorite things to happen is something I highly recommend. Don't ever drive by a garage sale that has only a couple tables out and be too lazy to check it out. Some of my best scores have happened that way. One time I found a vintage kids character watch. I can't remember who the character was, but I do remember that I made $200 on it. Other times, when there's only been a couple tables out front, I've discovered that there were a whole bunch of things inside the house for sale as well. And this is how I make my way around an estate sale. First off, I'm a basement girl. A lot of you know that. In all the decades I've been at this, that's where I've always found the most profit. And if the house is ultra packed, I'm going to find the most untouched part of the basement and just start digging. But this is a heads up that occasionally you'll run into. You might see another reseller and they'll say something like, "Oh, all that's mine over there," pointing to an entire area of a room that's not even been searched yet. I don't ever allow that. I just ignore them. I keep going through what I'm going through, not right next to them, of course, but I keep doing what I'm doing. And if they keep insisting that I'm going through their stuff, at that point, I'll tell them they need to take it up with the staff. And I've never had a problem after that. But one of my other favorite things is to look in closets. So many times the doors are unintentionally closed, so nobody's looking in them. Just two examples for you. In both cases, I paid almost nothing. I found about a dozen Coach belts once. They were all barely worn. They still had the leather tags. Another time I found over $1,000 in brand new sealed high-end makeup. You might be interested in my live sourcing playlist because you can see me making some other really great scores there. And anyway, if the house is a normal estate sale and it isn't packed, I'll first go to the basement, like I said, and when I'm done there, I will scan all the rest of the rooms and see which room I should focus on next. Home offices and craft rooms are two of my favorite rooms to go through. I should mention this too. I was at a hoarder's house one time and I saw this couple going through a walk-in closet, going through a whole bunch of shoe boxes with some cool ephemera. It looked like greeting cards, even some antique documents. But 30 minutes later, they hadn't moved. They were still painstakingly going through every single single piece of paper. You definitely don't want to get stuck like that. First of all, you can almost always get old paper like that for a song. I recommend grabbing those boxes to keep moving. You should definitely have a price cap in mind for checkout. Personally, I wouldn't pay more than $5 for something like that sight unseen, but you can go through all of it at home, but keep yourself moving through the house. And for me at least, the kitchen is probably the last room I go to, mainly because of crazy shipping prices now on all those heavy dishes and appliances. Ironically, one of my best scores was in the kitchen. It was a whole set of Cutco knives, but regardless, it is generally the last room I go to. And another way to win at every sale is to give those last days, even the last hours of a sale, a chance. The reselling knowledge base is simply so broad. Resellers miss valuable flips all the time. All of us do sometimes. And because we do, I rarely walk away empty-handed if I'm at a sale during those final hours. And in fact, some of my best finds have happened then. I did a video from a sale once. The contents of the house had been condensed completely into only the dining room and the kitchen. I spotted a set of James Avery charms for $50, and maybe $50 seemed like a lot of money to a lot of people, but I knew one of them sold for at least that much. So I ended up selling every last one of those charms for $75 each in only a few weeks' time. You need to stay curious, keep training your eye to identify the good stuff, and you too will have success even at the last hours of a sale. This is not to say I never walk away empty-handed, because I do, but it is rare. I regularly see other resellers, a lot of them I know, and they're buying armfuls of ordinary items because I think they don't like the feeling of walking away empty-handed from a sale. And when I talk to them, they say they're afraid to not have enough inventory, or they'll say they really want to improve the quality of their inventory, or they want to raise their average price point, but they're simply too tempted to keep buying inventory. Believe me, I understand the temptation there, but here's the problem. I don't know of one reseller who doesn't have at least a small death pile. It is much more important to chip away at that death pile than it is to try and list a whole bunch of mediocre items that may or may not sell. I am confident if you apply even one thing I've talked about today to your reselling life, you'll see your profits go up and your wasted time go down. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you on the next video.